Welcome back to At the FarmGate. I'm Jack Hughes, and in this episode, we're exploring the digital edge of biosecurity, how technology is reshaping the way farms protect themselves. I'm joined by Dean Button, the product owner at Livetec Systems, to talk about the challenges and opportunities of adopting digital solutions and to highlight the key features of the Livestock Protect dashboard, including the EBAS, the Access Protect, ERP, and Paula. So, hi, Dean. Welcome to the podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, about me. I am technically the product owner. I bridge the gap between business and digital. So when anybody needs a developer to put a button in a place, if the button doesn't work, you don't blame the developer, you blame me because I did not communicate that effectively. And also, obviously, I get feedback from users, from customers, and based on that feedback, we try to improve the platform to improve user experience.
And I must say, being in the firing line, Dean, you do solve these issues very well. So we can only thank you for that.
Thank you.
So from your perspective, and obviously pretty new to the agricultural side, in digital, you've been in digital a long time, but coming into agriculture, how do you believe technology is fundamentally changing the way we think about biosecurity?
Um, my dream would be that it would allow you not to have to think about biosecurity, that you could put automations in place and everything would just fall in line how digital people love to do things. In reality, and it's obviously a very different thing, but what we primarily look to do is to move you from being a reactive organization to being a proactive organization driven by real-time data. And how do we get that data? We look at how we aggregate that data, bring all of it to a single useful point for you, instead of you thinking of it as this large sea of the internet that you have to go and grab data from here and from there and contextualize it. We bring it all to a single point for you. We give you visibility across multiple sites, not just a single isolated farm. We ensure that we've got digital mapping in a geographical sense so that you can see everything on a map which is familiar with to you. So you really get that familiarity. It feels familiar. It feels like home, but just bringing everything together. And then obviously, ideally, as we're moving forward, we're looking at bringing predictive analytics in with AI modeling. So we're hoping we fundamentally change it to that mode of thought, that it's not how do we stop, how do we react to a disease, how do we rather proactively get ahead of the disease, how do you use the technology and data to do that.
Yeah, and I think obviously with digital to the agricultural sector is a new, it's not a new thing. Digital's been around for a long time, but I think when you talk around biosecurity, which is technically and is seen and is a physical activity,
Yeah.
to then try and describe it and to influence people that actually we can see it in a digital way and we can make changes, but we can only understand that through data and how people are working, where people are moving to, how what infrastructure is in place. Because fundamentally, when we do think about biosecurity, you walk onto a farm and you go that physical gate or that physical foot dip,
Yeah.
without really understanding whether it's working and the protocols that you have in place are effective. And I think as we work across wider groups and the wider industry, the data will tell us that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's explaining to people that people always think they can't be drawn into the digital world. And this goes across a number of industries where there's this exceptionalism of like, but we can't be converted to digital. And it's explaining practically everything, and all the local LLMs, the chat GPTs, and that you see. You've seen how digital can pull these things into that digital perspective. So just getting people's buy-in and understanding, and then changing their mindset in that regard, it's really difficult.
I think that
But
really comes to what I was about to say. What is the biggest hurdles to get people onto a digital biosecurity solutions, and how are we as a business trying to help them overcome that, and how are we moving that forward?
yeah, I mean, there are a number of hurdles. I think the first one is the cultural resistance. It is that thing, that exceptionalism of it's how how can we as Livetec, if a customer user looks at us and says, how are you able to digitize this? I don't understand that. And we need to obviously overcome that by clear training, by demonstrating time savings, by just, again, that piece in the first section, just showing the person everything they have in a context and how do we list that. A huge hurdle we always face in the UK is connectivity gaps in rural areas. So we look at providing hardware. How do we assist users with hardware to ensure that they have coverage? If they don't have coverage, if it's not an option, how do we make sure that the platform we build has offline capabilities so that eventually when you do come to either a mobile or a Wi-Fi network, it always syncs automatically, just ensuring that we have data integrity all the time and we don't lose the user experience. We don't have poor user experience in that regard. So you don't have this app with the spinning wheel of death where you try to open something. We always counter for that. Even once we do get all of that done and we get a user on board and they don't have any problems with internet coverage, then the next one is a data overload. I mean, how do we make sure that the user can pass this data and understand how to use it? What do we do with that data? It's all well and good getting all of this data, but we need to simplify that into dashboards. And importantly, out of those dashboards, get a prioritization of actionable insights. Integration with existing systems. For us, that is getting data from all of these disparate sources. It's a goalpost that moves on a daily basis. People upload their data in different formats, which means we have very strict pipelines and the pipeline falls over. So that's a tail that the poor data engineers are always chasing. And we're actually using artificial intelligence to help us solve that problem. So with us, we often talk about AI in the digital side, and then we realize, wait, AI, is it, because obviously we're thinking of artificial intelligence, but then we realize we obviously also talk about avian influenza. So there's often a bit of confusion on the digital side, and then obviously cost concerns.
Yeah.
Whenever anybody hears, oh, here's a platform, the first reaction is that knee-jerk reaction is, what will it cost me? And there will always be a cost aspect. We do have tiers where you have a free tier where we will notify everybody of whether in an outbreak zone or not, or when the zone has been rescinded. But once you get up to more premium tiers, it obviously becomes a pay for use model. How do we convince a user that the benefit of using that platform, and that's everything else you alluded to earlier on, Jack, those absolute benefits, those cost benefits in the long term, how do we get the user to understand that?
Yeah, I think you touched on it a little bit there as well. Is, farmers have, and producers, they have a lot of data. But this is data that they may well just see on a daily basis on pieces of paper. And I think to bring that into the digital world is to put it in the most simplest format, but the most effective way for them to see it. And what I've always seen in my experience is, once you give them something, they didn't know they wanted it, and then they want it, and then they say, what now? What else can I put on here? What else can I overlay on this to show me why this may be happening? So sometimes it's, the devil can be in the detail, and you can give them something and then it just asks more questions, which is great, because for us and for yourselves as a digital team, it expands and builds on the system that we're trying to build here. So just on that part, so for listeners who might be listening today, and they're not familiar with what we do with the digital side in the Livestock Protect, what problem are we trying, from your perspective? I mean, I've got my own perspectives, but from your perspective, what problems is it trying to solve?
We're trying to, for us, the absolute problem is to protect poultry and livestock operations. And how do we bring the digital platform in to do that? And what we're doing is we're solving the problem of fragmented paper-based and delayed biosecurity processes. So the great example is if your farm is in a prevention zone, there is a DEFRA site, you can sign up for emails, it comes with an OS grid reference. What we do is we automatically contextualize that for you. So we can do that management, and you can automatically see when you are or aren't in a zone. How does this affect you from a day-to-day operational point of view in terms of licensing? And how do we get you through that process? We even put you in contact with DEFRA if you think you have a suspected disease, which is quite important because then you get as much accurate data to DEFRA as quickly as possible, instead of there being a to and fro between you and DEFRA asking for information. We make sure we get you under DEFRA's into DEFRA's radar, and DEFRA's very aware straight away, very quickly. The importance is that real-time visual understanding of your farms and your risk exposure. And then we also support farmers, integrators, and regulators with consistent evidence-based reporting. And that was that point where I spoke about reporting to DEFRA. So once you've got an outbreak, it's been confirmed, you can change the status of this outbreak. And that's just the free aspects of the platform. We obviously go further into the premium section of the platform, where we have contingency planning, we have access control, we have the operations aspect, where you can monitor a depopulation live, and all of these obviously build up and build into this large ecosystem where, again, it's consolidated. It's one place, easy for you to see. Free version is app alone. As soon as you go into the premium version, you obviously get nice web-based access, gives you that better real estate. And we find most people, while we do worry about digital adoption, most people have a number of farm managers or people, they do actually manage their farms from a PC. So it's not as if we're talking about PC illiterate people.
No, we are in a digital age, and most farmers or producers, they do have computers or smartphones these days, because they do understand that the power of data is taking over from mind. What they can physically work out in their own minds, and how we can present that to them. So, to me, the free version of the app, as we're coming into an avian influenza season, if there ever is a season anymore in this country, is, I would advise everybody to go and download that and to review the premium features and see whether we can help in regards to the the risk level to the farm, and also being prepared through the emergency response plans. And that leads me on a little bit now to a new module that we've constructed in Access Protect, and you touched on it a little bit there about traceability and how we're trying to help identify where people may have well been. So from yourself, how do you see this helping organizations to control access and strengthen security, but also give that overview of traceability across a supply chain?
Yeah. So Access Protect it started out as the simple digitization of a visitor register. So you walk into a farm, you fill in a register, you come in, you go in, Jack, then I come in second. I see Jack Hughes above me. I get to see all of your information. I can copy anything. I can have my mobile phone. Suddenly, your information, your data is at risk. There's problem number one. Problem number two, my sketchy handwriting. Some poor person has to translate that at the end of the day. And then you go into simple things. I sign in at 10, 11, 24. Do I ever sign out? Simple things like that. So what we're trying to do is we use a QR code based system where you can either scan it or you can use an on-site tablet. We take this data, we consolidate it digitally, and then once we get you into that system, we will then send you a confirmation SMS. And most people probably don't sign out. It's just that they forget. And then what we do is we prod you. We ask you, are you going to be on site for half an hour or an hour? You say an hour. At an hour, say 5 minutes, we say, hey, Jack, are you still on site? You go, oh, I'm not. Click, I'm not on site anymore. We can then sign you out, which helps improve, it helps you meet health and safety regulations, fire regulations, and all of that. But what was really important about this is we realized we're gathering this data. We can visualize movement. We can see that Dean went from farm A to farm B to farm C and back to farm A. And when we start tracking a disease, we can see risky movements as well as on farm. If a certain person shouldn't be going on farm to certain sections on a farm, and we see them scanning in at a certain section, we can start controlling who goes where and saying who should or shouldn't be there. Over and above that, it has expandability where you can put a QR code on, for example, a silo or an egg collection point and gather data, gather additional data there. So it's an exceptionally powerful piece that touches on a daily pain point that's quite important for users.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think it's a game changer in traceability, understanding, where people potentially, again, if you tied it back to our EBAS system, where they may well have been on a vulnerable farm and possibly then gone and entered another vulnerable farm. What is the possibility of, a challenge has moved around? And I think the real power in the modules that we're putting together here, although, we are trying to prevent avian influenza and salmonellas, is to be able to identify them small challenges which are really causing, as much as avian influenza causes a massive issue, but I think for producers and farmers to really embrace what biosecurity can do, is we've got to show that there is potential challenges moving potentially from shed to shed and farm to farm, which are really causing a problem on a day-to-day basis. A producer's bread and butter is what goes out of the door. They're spending money to feed these birds and get these birds up to weight and produce eggs. But ultimately, it's how many eggs go out of the door and how much weight goes out of the door within the broiler sector. And I think there's many challenges there what affect that by affecting mortality and growth rates and egg productivity. And I think if we can use a system like we're trying to build here to highlight that, it really puts a figure on what biosecurity is. Again, we look at biosecurity as being a physical measure, but no real understanding of what it's doing for you if you're never seeing a challenge or you're never seeing an avian influenza outbreak. And for myself, when we talk about AI, we have this in our mind that we need to heighten biosecurity. Well, actually, if we just kept it high or achievable all year round, we would get better production and better performance from the birds that we've placed on the ground. So I think by bringing all of these tools together in certain ways and use cases, we can really start to identify the profitability in spending a little bit more on biosecurity. And that doesn't mean you have to go out and spend a hell of a lot of money. And most of it, to me, comes down to mindset change and using what you've already got on the ground. So on the back of that, when we're talking there about reducing risk, I'd like to just touch a little bit on contingency planning and how we plan for a time that hopefully not many of our listeners would ever need or never go through, but it's inevitable at some point that someone is going to get a notifiable disease, and we're trying to provide tools through our emergency response plans to ensure that our customers are prepared for that time of anxiety and mental strain. So I mean, how do you think our ERP capabilities are providing a more comprehensive approach to biosecurity? How are we helping people with that in the digital space?
So that's where we're digitizing another outbreak contingency process, where our goal is to link your day-to-day biosecurity monitoring with crisis management. And by doing this, we ensure faster mobilization of depopulation and control resources. And we offer farm-specific contingency documents and workflows instantly. And what a user does is they complete a really long document ahead of time. You complete this document in peacetime. So when in peace, prepare for war, right? And it's something that you don't have to do under pressure. It's quite easy. It's digital. And when you're suddenly under pressure, all you have to do is update your bird numbers, click print, and magically you have this, or magically by means of a lot of data capturing in the background by the user, you have this really nice comprehensive document that is EXD40 compliant and goes a step further. And what this does is it provides confidence to not only regulators, but also retailers that businesses are prepared. And what the document also does is it asks farmers questions that occasionally they wouldn't have thought of, or things they just took for granted. And then as they go through this, they go, oh, need to improve that, look at that. It's that thing of asking you, how do I get from A to D? You often forget steps B and C. And suddenly it makes you think about steps B and C. And again, it's just having something at your fingertips that is easy for you to access in a digital format.
Yeah, I think bringing that emergency response plan, and that will, with future functionality and the ability to, highlight to our customers or users of the emergency response plan that, you are potentially in a zone or close to a zone, you are needing now to go and update your live bird numbers because you may well get a veterinary visit. And I think that capability, as much as we provide that as a one-to-one, the way we work with our customers in picking the phone up, this is what you need to do, you're about to fall into a zone. I think with the power of a digital program like we're constructing here, it takes that little bit of burden off us as an advisors and not having to bring too many advisors into the table, but it also keeps producers fresh and understanding what it is they need to keep up to date. And I think that capability is fundamental to ensuring everybody is prepared at a time when, as you say, being ready. But ultimately, I think that capability will spread throughout the systems that we're building here, and future enhancements in how we can keep people fresh and updated on changes in legislation, but also in what needs to be kept on farm for possibly assurance schemes, for your own compliance, and also for government needs. So we are in an AI driven world, as you spoke about earlier, and I do mean artificial intelligence there, Dean, not saving influenza, because we don't want that driving the world. But we are in an AI world, and people are using it more and more. It's been integrated into every part of our lives, and it's a very powerful tool. But it also can be an unpowerful tool by pulling data in from various parts of the depths of the internet, what might truly not entirely be true. And what we're trying to do here, and I'd like you to touch on it a little bit, is Paula. And I'll let Dean mention why it's called Paula. But this is now our AI assistant. And yeah, tell us a little bit about it, Dean.
Cool. So Paula is an acronym for Protecting Agriculture Through Unified Learning and Assistance. It's technically a backronym because we have two Pauls in our business. We have Dr. Paul Telling on the knowledge side, who helped us, along with Jack, build all of our questions. And then we have Paul Fitzpatrick on the development side. So it was applicable that we backronym a Paula and made her more approachable than developers would normally be. And yeah, it's an artificial intelligence driven, not chatbot. We always like, oh, we don't want to call it a chatbot because people are so scared of chatbots. They're like, oh, chatbots are just the things that bug us in the corner. And it's true because they don't pull from reliable sources. The problem is if you choose, you've all started out with Google, say 20, 25 years ago, and you get page 1, 2, 3, up to page 100. You could be going through pages for ages. ChatGPT, Gemini, they're really great, but they pull from everything. They famously pull from Reddit, and Reddit subreddits can go down really interesting rabbit holes that nobody should have to go down. So what we do is we curate it. We make sure it pulls from DEFRA, it pulls from Red Tractor, industry outbreak data, the Livetec website, our national outbreak plan, and we ensure that the user is getting selected data that doesn't allow it to go off on any tangents, and it's verified. Of course, AI has the ability to hallucinate. How we offset that is you can ground it. So we've grounded it a lot more. So Paula can take a time to answer sometimes, but that is because it is a very grounded model. And what it does is it provides that instant on-demand answer to complex biosecurity questions and bridges the knowledge gaps for farmers without having to wait on an advisor in the short term. And it supports decision-making with guidance tailored specifically to UK legislation and best practice. What's really great about it is it can scale. So we can load your standard operating procedure, and your company would have alone would have access to those. So you would be able to say, based on Red Tractor, I have so many birds at such a weight, and this is the area. What are the maximum number of birds I'm allowed to have in that area based on Red Tractor guidance? And obviously, if Red Tractor is updated in, say, the last 6 weeks, it would then go to Red Tractor and say, okay, you're allowed X amount of birds in that, and you'd see, do you have to thin your flock or not? So it has a lot of potential that going forward, if you start using it as your personal biosecurity advisor just to chat to,
I fully agree with that, and I think beyond biosecurity and just servicing the livestock industry and the poultry industry, with the feature of it only pulling from reputable sources, I mean that's fantastic for the industry because you're not having to go and to Google, potentially how much disinfection or dilution rate such a disinfectant is, or it is said disinfectant still on the DEFRA, approved list. And I think there's wider uses in it away from biosecurity as well, fundamentally around biosecurity. But as you say, I think when you can upload into it the lion code, for instance, or red tractor for turkeys and chickens and all these different livestock types, it actually gives people a one-stop source to be able to ask it a simple question to get the correct answer back. And I think that
Yeah.
this could be a real powerful tool for the industry in its entirety.
Yeah.
So looking ahead, we've got some great tools and some great things coming in the pipeline. And with my blue sky thinking brain and our team's blue sky thinking brain of how things can be done, and you keep us in line on whether it's achievable. How do you see new and emerging technologies shaping the future of biosecurity?
Ooh, predictive analytics. Even before we bring AI into it, we have a new piece of functionality coming in soon where we're looking at wild bird migration, and we're correlating wild bird migration with wild bird deaths, which is correlated with AI outbreaks. So we're looking at how do we bring that into biosecurity solutions? How do we forecast outbreak risks before they occur? If and that's also influenced by weather patterns. So we want to start consolidating all of this data and giving the user the ability to batten down the hatches before the storm comes. Um, IoT sensors, wearables monitoring environment, movement, welfare. Those, again, a lot of that really depends on very good internet coverage and things like that. So there's a lot of, which comes first, the chicken or the egg in this case. So do we get users to push this, which increases the demand for connectivity, or does the connectivity enable this? A word that people were very familiar with a few years ago, blockchain, which is essentially crypto. So blockchain style traceability, because what that does is it allows open and transparent traceability of diseases, and it allows the farm to retailer traceability, which again improves communication. And then increased automation, so reducing manual compliance tasks, freeing up teams for strategy, and very importantly, a move towards data-driven certification and assurance, replacing static audits.
Yeah, I second that. Um, but I mean, one thing that you did say that, and it does excite me, and I've seen what's going on in the background is this wild bird monitoring, and I think for the industry to be able, and from the feedback what we've been getting from people who've seen it, even not just in the UK but around the world as well, is that can be a serious game changer in knowing when these potential disease incursions could occur. And that's not that we can specifically say exactly this bird is carrying this, avian influenza. But I'm a big believer in data doesn't lie, and clean data definitely doesn't lie. And plotted in the right way when you can see the birds that are migrating up from Africa through France and maybe Belgium and the Netherlands, and we're then seeing hotspots of wild bird deaths of the same type of bird, also commercial outbreaks, and then we're seeing them then type of bird or species landing in Norfolk and Yorkshire. I mean, I'm not a scientist to be able to say it, and I wouldn't like to say it, but I'll be pretty much guaranteeing that these birds are carrying avian influenza, and to know that and to put that tool in front of people to be able to make their own predictions, but to also have enough data there to try and influence larger organisations in when control zones should come in place. I think is going to be a fundamental way the industry is going to go.
Yeah, and I mean, over and above that, we can even look at once they've implemented control zones, does that, what impact has that had? Has that actually, we were in an interview with somebody a while ago, and they asked somebody who works in the biosecurity industry, and they weren't even aware of whether the steps they were taking had any impact because they weren't tracking the spread of the disease. So, and that's what we can start doing with this, is we look at it, we try to get ahead of it, but we also see the results. What is the efficacy of implementing these zones? It comes down to that thing of, does the lockdown work? If the lockdown works, then it's worth it. If the lockdown doesn't work, what other steps do you take to limit the spread of that disease?
Of course, and I think, as you say, if you monitor, right, we've housed every bird, and there's no free range birds in the country, and they're all housed, but we're then still seeing outbreaks, not only in the free range sector, but in the house sector. Then we've surely got to tie that back to a potential risk factor that's been highlighted on them farms. That's fundamentally how it's getting in. If it's in the country, it doesn't mean that it's going to be in your shed. To me personally, you could have avian influenza on the concrete in the front of the shed. You've still got to get it into that shed in some way, shape, or form. And I think through the systems that we're trying to build and influence here, it's a clear marker in identifying them. And again, like you say, if in time, if we can measure that against the effectiveness of everybody housing against actual physical biosecurity, I'm pretty much sure that we'll see that physical biosecurity has to come up as well as housing has to come into place. And that should be all year round, as I mentioned earlier, to ensure challenges are not being occurred on a daily basis. But on that note, Dean, I'd like to thank you for coming on to the podcast and taking some of your time up. So it's a big thank you to you, Dean Button, for joining me and sharing how the Livestock Protect platform is helping farms to strengthen their biosecurity. So for our listeners, if you found this episode useful, be sure to hit subscribe and never miss one of our updates or upcoming episodes. We've got plenty more expert insights coming our way. So help protect the future and help protect your farms. See you next time. Bye-bye.